Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great today. Okay, so a whole lot has happened in the last 24 hours, and I'm going to really try my best not to go over or waste too much time on things that I believe you must have seen in the media. I'm going to try to see if I can help you connect the dots that I've always wanted to connect for you from the day one, from the very beginning, from the first time that I posted that video that scared me about 2022, which was where this whole journey began for me and probably for so many of you. Now, here's what I have to tell. Let's just go over a few things that happened today so that you can understand what I'm driving at. First of all, we noticed that the Ukrainian president started sounding like he was very demoralized. He started blaming NATO, started blaming European allies, started blaming America. In the way that he put it, he said, I asked them if we're together, and they said yes. But now no one is here to fight with us. We are the only ones fighting for ourselves. He sounded almost like he was crying, and he was making that statement. And in the middle of that, he now said that I'm not afraid of Russia, and I'm not afraid to discuss Ukraine's neutrality with Russia. Now, I want to go over that a little bit so that I can help you understand what he meant by he was not afraid of discussing Ukraine's neutral status with Russia. Okay? Ukraine's neutral status was what led to all this problem. Russia, when they actually asked Ukraine to go, when they actually released Ukraine from the Union, not completely, because remember, I had already explained to us in previous videos that all the former member states of the Soviet Union, the old Soviet bloc, all of them, as they were leaving the Union, as they were leaving the Soviet bloc, all of them had some type of agreement they reached with Russia before they left. Now, when Poland left, when Estonia left, Latvia, the rest of them, all of them actually left. About 10 or 11 of them had already left because the Soviet Union collapsed. So they couldn't hold all these other people. So when they were leaving, there were certain agreements that were reached before they were allowed to go and be on their own. And remember also that I told us about what happened when East Germany was allowed to go and join West Germany, because East Germany was part of the old Soviet bloc. But before they were allowed to join West Germany, they had to agree that NATO was never going to expand even 1 inch eastward. But as it is today, NATO has gone way beyond 1 inch eastward by taking almost 10 of the former Soviet countries and making them members of NATO. Now, each one of them, like I said, signed an agreement or came into an agreement on what they must not do if they were going to be on their own. And everybody understood that. That of Ukraine is called actually Budapest Agreement. You can look it up. That Ukraine was not going to become a nuclear power. There are some weapons that Ukraine was not allowed to possess because it meant that Ukraine would become a potential threat to Russia. It will become a security threat to Russia. I told you also in one of my videos that Ukraine used to have about 1/3 of the world's nuclear stockpiles. But all of them were disabled based on that agreement. Okay? Now, what happened was that while Zelensky was doing all his talking and getting frustrated before the whole invasion happened, he now hinted on the fact that he could actually revisit that agreement, meaning that he could actually cancel whatever was agreed upon and then make Ukraine a nuclear power again. And if you know the missile thing that happened between America and Cuba and saw how America reacted, you will understand why that will make Russia to even invade Ukraine and do whatever they have to do to secure that facility. Because I said to you several times, the moment a nation possesses nuclear power, you can actually destroy anybody within minutes. You have become a potential threat. We are talking about even nations that were warned before that still has a sizable number of its population that are Russian speaking. But what about Israel and Iran? Have you not heard so many times when Israel has threatened that if Iran is allowed to develop nuclear weapon, that Israel will go there and bomb and destroy the facility? They had even carried some bombing in Iran. I mean, Iran is Islamic, Israel is Jewish. So there is even no connection between the two nations. But just for the sake of their own national security, knowing that the moment Iran possesses that weapon, Israel can be wiped off, as Ahmadinejad said some time ago. So Israel can actually go to Iran, a Muslim nation that is way, way bigger than Israel, to go and bomb the nuclear facility, just so that they don't pose a threat to Israel, let alone Russia that is there like this, the same, almost the same thing. If not for the borders, they are just exactly the same country with Ukraine, a smaller nation. So Russia then say, Ukraine, you have to be very neutral. That's the neutral status he's talking about. Neutral means that you cannot rush to go and join NATO. Because now when you join NATO, NATO will begin to pour their weapons into you and probably even help you to develop your nuclear weapons. And then NATO will become a threat to Russia, because NATO is an arch enemy of the Russian Federation. That's why you see them doing what they're doing today. Russia doesn't like NATO. NATO doesn't like Russia. NATO believes that Russia is too big to become one country, or too big of a threat to NATO. This was why Donald Trump was kicked out of power, because Trump was not supporting NATO enough to be able to deal or challenge Russia. That's why he had to go. And I did a video where I showed you how that Emmanuel Macron was talking about the destiny of NATO is finished with a man like Donald Trump, because when Trump came to power, he refused to allow American money to continue to fund NATO. NATO went through hell. NATO was almost in coma. Macron even said it.
President Macron of France has said that the once robust NATO alliance is in terminal decline and is becoming brain dead. Well, Macron made the remarks in an interview with the UK's Economist magazine. The French president also cast doubt too on the reliability of NATO's Article 5, which requires member states to come to one another's defence if attacked. He suggested that the deterrent has been undermined by Washington's faltering commitment, and also said too that Europe needs to assert itself as a geopolitical power.
Europe is now dealing for the first time with an American president who doesn't share our idea of the European project. If we don't wake up, there's a considerable risk that in the long run we will disappear geopolitically, or at least that we will no longer be in control of our own destiny. I believe that very deeply.
He said it by himself, that NATO was gone. But can you imagine the same NATO, less than 2 years after Biden has come to power, NATO is now strong enough to challenge a strong nation like Russia. So you can imagine what is going on. So that same neutral status is what Zelensky is now coming back to say, that he doesn't mind having that discussion with Russia. And Russians are probably thinking, but this is what we've been talking about all along, and you refuse to have that conversation because the NATO guys and Americans were pushing him and telling him, no, don't do that, because we're going to make you come and join our NATO. We'll do whatever it takes to make you join NATO. So he never wanted to have that conversation with them, according to all the reports at our disposal. And now you can see, I'm not making this up. He said, because he felt that NATO had let him down, he now decided, you know what? I'm not afraid to have that conversation with you, Russia. And then immediately after he said that, as if that kind of hit the NATO guys a little bit, they had an emergency meeting. And in that emergency meeting, I'm going to read you what happened at the emergency meeting. NATO then immediately activated what they call their response force. Now, when NATO activates a response force, what it means is that if anyone attacks or does anything to a NATO member state, NATO can then mobilize its forces together with those of their ally, the USA, and attack that person who has attacked the NATO member state. And who are the NATO member states in Eastern Europe? All the states that surround Russia, that were allowed to go who later then joined NATO, Poland, Macedonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, all of them, they are all NATO member states. So for instance, if there's a provocation now from Poland or Estonia or any one of these places, and Russia decides, you know what, we have had enough of this, boom, Russia decides to bomb or do something to one of the, NATO's activation of its response force means that every single thing that NATO has in terms of military, in terms of warships, in terms of airplanes or fighter jets, all of them will be deployed immediately to attack Russia for doing that. This has happened now. That was what happened when they had that meeting. They've activated it already. Now, my question is, why did they suddenly run to activate this? Remember, let's keep this in mind. Ukraine is still not a member of NATO, only aspiring. Never has it been a member of NATO. Nobody knows if it will ever be a member of NATO. But NATO is now saying we have amassed plenty of weapons. Let me give you the list. I think I can even say it offhand. They have about 120 warships around Russia, in the Mediterranean, in the Black Sea. They have those warships armed and ready, combat ready. They have 100 fighter jets ready for combat. Tens of thousands of soldiers that are ready for war. All around. Did you not hear Biden when he was saying that he was sending an additional 7,000 soldiers to join the ones that are already in Europe, all in anticipation of Russia touching a member state of NATO, all in anticipation. Not like the war has been declared on them, because they kept saying that we are not supposed to put troops on ground in Ukraine. And the reason they said that is because Ukraine is not a member state of NATO. But they are saying that because we suspect that Russia may touch one of our member states, we are sending tens of thousands, 120 warships, troop levels boosted in all these countries, just because we are anticipating. Is it only anticipation that will make them begin to boost the troop levels and pour weapons, more weapons to those regions, just by the people who share the same border with Russia? So why did I go this route explaining this to you? So that you can see how that this whole thing is pushing and moving us all towards that same aim that I've always talked about, the World War III. That's why in the beginning, from the previous videos I've made, I said I suspect, it's just personal suspicion, that Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is not completely in control. And I've just heard a few journalists from the West, even not even Russia, from Europe, saying that from the look of things, that this guy doesn't seem to be in control of what is happening. You will see him saying one thing 1 minute, the next minute he's saying another thing. It's as if he doesn't even know if mercenaries in his country are the ones provoking certain things. He doesn't have a full handle on everything that is going on in Ukraine. That's why you see him 1 minute he's saying, I don't mind talking with Russia. The next minute he comes out again, he says, our people must fight to defend our city. And then he comes out again, he said, now I am calling on the Russian Federation, even openly, that you can see people are dying everywhere. There's war all over Ukraine. I want us to come to a place where we can have a discussion on ceasefire. He actually extended that to Russia.
Хочу еще раз обратиться к президенту Российской Федерации. По всей территории Украины идут бои. Давайте садиться за стол переговоров, чтобы остановить гибель людей.
And Russia didn't say, okay, well, we don't want to talk with you because you brought us this far. Let's go ahead and do this war. You know what Russia said? Russia said, okay, since you're asking for us to have a talk on ceasefire, let us meet in Minsk, Belarus. Minsk, Belarus. Belarus is the nation, one nation from the old Soviet bloc that is still with Russia till today. Now, if you ask me from an emotional level, Ukraine may have a point if they say, I don't want to go to Minsk because the Belarusians allowed Russian tanks to enter into Ukraine to attack us through their country. Then what do you expect? They are allies to Russia, right? But then another thing you will think of is, if you know you are a smaller country and you're the one who came out and made a press release, and you ask the superpower and say, I want us to have a chat so we can discuss on how to bring about a ceasefire. You shouldn't be having a lot of choices. You should follow what the man wants you to do. If Russia was able to say, let us talk, then I want us to use this location. I feel, personal opinion, I feel that Ukraine should have actually obliged them and go to Minsk to go and have that chat, or send people who will go there. The president doesn't have to go by himself, because Russia will send delegation. He also will send their own delegation, and they can go and discuss it and see whether they can bring about ceasefire so that people will stop dying. But what happened was, when Russia offered to have a discussion at Minsk, Belarus, Ukraine suddenly turned around and said, I want us to have it in Warsaw, Poland. Poland is a member of the former Soviet Union that later left and became a NATO member. So Poland is silently an enemy of Russia, because it's not a part of NATO, because you know that NATO is an avowed arch enemy of Russia. So Russia, as a superpower, is supposed to decide, I don't want to go to these enemies because they're the ones that have been bad-mouthing me, they're the ones supplying weapons to Ukraine to fight us. Even Poland has shut the airspace to Russian jets or Russian flights. So how can Russia be going over there? Now, two of you have choices, but the bigger person should win so that people will stop dying on the ground. So when they now suggested Warsaw, when Ukraine suggested Poland, we didn't hear any other response from Russia. All we hear is another press release from Zelensky saying, yeah, this night is going to be one of the toughest nights in the history of our city, Kyiv. And he's asking everybody to fight to defend the place. Now, Russia is a superpower. I keep reminding you this. And they are very, very powerful and very big. It's not a joke. Many people don't know who Russia is. And I'm not trying to promote Russia for anything. You do your own research. Before you can earn the status of a superpower, you must know what you have done to earn that status. There's no way in life you can begin to compare Ukraine's military capabilities with that of Russia. It's like a drop in the ocean. And so you're telling Ukrainians, of course, you know that Zelensky declared a martial law in Ukraine and said that every male man that is between the ages of 18 and 60 must not be allowed to leave Ukraine. You must stay back, pick up arms, and fight to defend your fatherland. Only women, children, and elderly are allowed to leave. All these boys are there. And in my spirit, when I heard that, I said, this sounds to me like human sacrifice. Because how many small weapons will you use to defend yourself against Russia, as big as Russia is, if you don't have help coming from a foreign land, if you don't have machinery that are fighting with you? How can you face Russia? If you carry all those small light weapons to go and fight a man with big tanks, with fighter jets and all kinds of stuff, you know, how many of the weapons that were sent to you by NATO and the US allies and all that will you be able to use? For how long can you use those weapons? Because by now, I'm pretty sure that Russia must have cut off all the logistics entry points from where they send weapons into Ukraine. So those ones that you receive may run out anytime. How far can you hold on? What he said earlier was the best option, to go and have a talk with these people. But why he decided to go and give a different position or a different location is what I don't know. And now he's already saying again that the people should get ready to fight, that we will not give up on our city, which is a very good thing, which is a way of boosting the morale of his people. But when you look at it intelligently, what sense does it make, knowing that you're going to only incur a lot of casualties? You're going to bring so much destruction to your city. So I was just watching a short while ago, just so that you can see the kind of discordant tunes we are getting from Ukraine, which makes me believe there are so many things that Zelensky is not in control of. I was watching the UN Security Council meeting where they were supposed to vote and unanimously condemned Russia's action, right? Of course, you know that China did not vote. And of course, you also know that Russia, who's a permanent member of the UN Security Council, also vetoed the vote. So it wouldn't stand. But beyond that, because I'm going to come to the China one later, but let me explain to you what I just heard. I heard him with my own ears, Ukraine's representative at the United Nations. Let me tell you what the guy was saying. I don't know if you like, you can go look for the video and check it. The guy was saying to the whole world that Russia has suffered a lot of casualties in Ukraine already. That the soldiers are being killed. The tanks and the fighter jets are being brought down. It was like a beautiful boast, like, okay, you came for us, so we're dealing with you. And then he went further to say, sadly, maybe what will end this war, sadly, is when thousands upon thousands of Russian soldiers are delivered to their parents in Russia, maybe that's when Putin will then wake up. Because in our land, Ukraine, we will not give you any hospitality. That's an open threat, more like saying, we are equal. You can come. We will deal with you. It's like the defiance, the direction of his defiance, the tone of his defiance was too outrageous to me that I was wondering, is this guy truly a Ukrainian? When you're saying this to a superpower who can do anything, who you know that in 1,000 lifetimes, this man is way bigger than you guys. When you're saying this in the open, meaning that you are saying to him, we've killed many of your people and thousands of them are going to be delivered to the parents and then you're going to wake up. What do you expect the guy to do? This happened at the UN Security Council in front of the whole world. And so you have the Ukrainian president saying, I want to talk. And you have the representative at the UN saying, well, we're going to send thousands of Russian soldiers back to their parents. No. What is going on here? There is a concerted effort to drive this thing to a third world war. Every time it seems as if there is a little chance, a little opportunity for some diplomacy to happen, something just happens and it falls. Look at this one where Zelensky was calling for talks 2 times in 2 different press releases. Look what happened. Why not go to Minsk? Send people. Suddenly, he changed his mind. It's going to be worse. Because they know that the moment they say Warsaw, Poland, that Russia will not respond again to them. That's why the Russians are now saying that he's not serious about it. Maybe the guy genuinely actually wants to have that thing. But the people who are handling him, the people who are behind this whole program, this whole arrangement, will tell him, go and say this. He's always frustrated and confused because there are too many people talking to him. That's why when I hear people say the guy is not fully in control, I tend to kind of believe it in a way. If you know you wanted peace, you go straight for peace. By now, maybe there would have been ceasefire tonight while they are having that peace talk in Minsk, Belarus. But today, it's going to be fire again. And Russia is going to push further to go and take Kyiv, Ukraine. You can see how the Russian president is now beginning to talk angrily, to the point he's even asking the military to overthrow the president. Can you imagine? That's how bad things have become right now. How do you then pull them back from that brink and then go to talk peace? Because I don't think there are some forces that do not want peace to reign in this thing. That's what I've been telling you. I hope that you must have listened to what the Chinese representative said at the UN Security Council meeting. The guy said that it is unfair for the whole world to be talking to Russia as if this matter started yesterday, as if this war just began when Russia invaded Ukraine. He said, why is the EU and the rest of the world not paying attention to Russia's security concerns? And they are lambasting Russia as if Russia has no right to have security concerns, that no other nation would take it. This was what China was saying on the floor there. It tells you where China's loyalty lies. It tells you where China stands in all this. Do you see why that same video that scared me about 2022 was saying that this world war is going to be Russia working with China and then the Arabs to deal with Europe, America, and the rest of them. See why I told you? Joe Biden has already said that they are sending soldiers, meaning that America is officially getting into the war. If anything happens to Poland or any of this and the NATO fight, America is fighting. So Russia is going to respond in kind. And all the nations that are member states of NATO, all of them will receive Russian fire. And it's probably going to be nuclear weapons. And America will not be spared. See why people in these regions are going to start making potential plans for ways of escape right now in case anything happens. This was why I was telling them about Kyiv. Nobody wanted to listen. Now look at the number of people that are in bunkers, in subways in Kyiv. No plan. Many of them took only a nylon bag or maybe just something, or pets or their children. And that's it. Nothing else left. They lost every other thing, looking for how to escape. These guys are intent on doing this because according to Russia and according to reports you can check out for yourself, they say Russia is too big to be one nation. Russia is a threat to the European Union because Russia is very big and powerful. As of 2017, 60% of the energy needs of Europe was supplied by Russia. By now, it's even more than 60%, more than that. Can you imagine that? So they feel that Russia needs to be whittled down, needs to be dismembered and brought down and trimmed. See where we're headed now. The same World War III. And this is why we declared prayer. And I said to everybody, we need to pray. This is not a joke. Remember when we started, you can go check all my videos and hear how many people came to preach to me. He said, oh God, this is not what the Bible said. You need to preach hope and preach peace. You are fear-mongering, you're doom. That had to become my middle name. Until it started happening, everybody's rushing, calling, hey Joe, please, what do we do? What do you do, really? What do you do? And I've been doing it and you people have been, it was so difficult to even pay attention to what I was saying. I'm telling you again now, I have been consistent from day one that this is what is planned. Do you know how many videos I lay my hands on every day? But when I saw this one, I say, yes, I can see the dots connecting. I see the dots connecting. Can't you see what is happening? Ukrainian president, he's here this minute, the next minute he's there, the next minute he's there, action takes place, he doesn't even know what is happening, then he's encouraging to do and fight, he says, okay, I want to talk, and then it's just all over the place. Giving credence to all the suspicions that we've had, that there are some bad actors that are taking decisions inside that country, probably even provoking the other side without his own consent or knowledge. And that's where the dangerous dimension comes in. So if you know how to pray, pray. Because they're going to want to roll everybody into this. Pray and say, Father God, place a shield of protection over the continent of Africa. Place a shield of protection over my country, over my family, over my own people, wherever they may be. This should be the principal prayer point that everybody should be praying. A shield of protection. Give us the navigational wisdom to move wherever you want us to move to when the time comes. If there is no plan of stopping the storm that is coming. Help us, oh God, preserve us and save our souls. That should be your prayer. And I pray that God will give you the grace to do that. May God bless you.